Hello and welcome back to the Voltcast, my weekly podcast where I chat to professional athletes and coaches from across the world about all things distance running. Today we're joined by Cooper Berry, a young and fast marathon runner that took Berlin Marathon by storm this year. On this episode we talk about training, supplements and most importantly mental health. Make sure to stick around to the end to find out his goals for 2023. Without further ado, let's head in to the Vault.
So, hi, my name is Cooper. I am a 21-year-old young elite marathon runner who recently ran 2:24:26 at Berlin, which was a 4-minute PB in my third ever marathon. So, yeah, that's a bit about me. And I've recently started working for Sweat Elite. Don't know how you want to phrase us. We're a production company that does podcasts, YouTube channel. We have a YouTube channel that just crossed 100,000 subscribers, and we have a podcast as well. Might have mentioned that, and yeah, we cover all things elite training. So I'm helping out Matt Fox, the owner, as a social media intern, and I do all things social media for him.
Cool. So how did you first get into running? Obviously, your third ever marathon, you ran a 2:24. So how did you get from not running or just starting running and to get into 2:24? Because it looks like from your power of a 10, you've only been racing since 2019. So I'm quite interested to see how it's happened.
Yeah, the journey into running is a bit of an interesting one with me. So I played high level football or soccer, if there's anyone in different countries that play it. Of course, football is quite topical at the moment with the World Cup going on. Still one of my biggest passions and loves. I don't play it anymore. Something that maybe I'll play in the future. But I played high level football throughout my younger years, from 7 till I was about 11, maybe a bit older actually. And I was running alongside that. I started running cross country in year 7. That was when I sort of got introduced to the cross country team. You're at high school, you want to be part of all the clubs, and I threw myself into everything, whether it be rugby, badminton, tennis, of course football. I was part of the football team. Of course, being only 5'6", rugby was not my finest choice of sport, but we've all got to try something. And thankfully, I chose cross country and just fell in love straight away. Had some breakthrough performances in my younger years, and from there on, I've loved running. My dad is an ultra marathon runner, so running's always been in the family, and I've always watched him and admired him from a young age, but never really thought that was for me. I always thought, oh, Dad, I'm going to be a footballer, because that was where I was heading. But like so many young people that have promise in football, so little actually make it pro really. And unfortunately, I had my dreams cut short when I was 13 and got dropped from our local academy. And then I was like, right, let's make this running thing work, and have been running since my early teenage years, with a couple of breaks for triathlon. I did do triathlon over COVID, but I suppose I'm still running, but I went a bit down a rabbit hole with triathlon, which was a fun and interesting time. Not one I regret, but one that maybe I could have done differently, and maybe in my later years would have been a better choice.
What went wrong with the triathlon?
I think so. I just finished GCSEs, which are sort of year 11. So when you're 16, 17, you take these end of year exams. And I just finished my exams. I had a year of not really doing much activity while I was focusing on my study. I was running just for fun, just for social. There wasn't any races going on. And after that, I don't know why. I can't remember the reason for why I wanted to get into triathlon, but I was like, I've always been a good swimmer because I'm from Australia originally. You're not going to believe that with my accent now, but came over when I was 7 years old, so lost my accent in the first year. So when in Aussie, Australia, they just throw you in the water. So I've always been able to swim, always liked cycling, like most kids do. You get thrown on a bike and cycle with friends. And I thought, oh, I'm not bad at running. Let's give it a go. a new challenge after my GCSEs. Did it for 3 years, and like everything I do, I take it incredibly seriously, and I'm not someone that holds back. If I'm doing something, I want to do it. I want to put my all into it, invest everything into it, and take it to the best level possible. And I could see that maybe I'd have the potential to hit the times for pro triathlon at some point, if I got lucky and if the right things happened. And I just dreamed of that life. We then had COVID, where I thought, right, there's no excuse now. I've got all the time in the world. I'm furloughed from my job. I was working at a gym at the time, and I thought I might as well train for 20, 25 hours a week. I had a coach, and he believed that I could go pro. And yeah, just gave it my all for those 3 years. Eventually, just as many people might know who are listening, who are triathletes, it's a very costly sport in that you pay to go fast to an extent. There's only so far you can take the sport without financial limiting factors. Running is a lot more inclusive. And in the end, I just had to say, sorry, I've been down this rabbit hole for too long, and had to take a step back. It's still a big passion of mine, and I still follow the sport. Of course, Sweat Elite, we do triathlon content as well, but I'm very thankful to be killing it in the running game. It's a nice sport to be good at.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people that we've spoken to, we've had a few triathletes on, and do you know Jess Learmonth?
I do.
Yeah. So we had, I think she was probably the first episode that we did a while back, and she was saying like she was literally spending all of her pay on getting a carbon bike, and then all of a sudden she got sponsored, so she didn't actually need, like, the money she was saving, she didn't need it in the end, and obviously her sponsor ended up paying for, well, just giving her a bike and stuff. So yeah, I feel like, whereas and then we got on to talking about like her favorite sport. If she had to drop two and pick one, she said running, because you just put a pair of trainers on and go out there and just hit it. So
it was always my best discipline. I did get to being quite a good cyclist. Had some interest from some pro cycling teams, being a very slight build, but in the end, like you said, running is just the purest sport out there. You lace up your trainers and you head out the door. I'm not a music guy. I love my music, but I run for the enjoyment of running, and it's what kept me going during COVID, is being able to get out there and just have that hour to myself. Even though we were locked in for so many months, as long as I got my hour run done and ticked off those miles, the rest of the day went easier. Even if it was on the treadmill. I've got a treadmill right next to me now that was a lockdown purchase, and it just made getting through those tough times a lot easier, really.
Yeah. So what made you choose the marathon? That's the question, because I know I chose the marathon once, and I'm one of those people who've never had a coach. I have a coach now. I've only really started taking running seriously this year. But before then, I just like trained myself. I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. I just used YouTube as an inspiration. So I used to go on like Flow Track and just be like, oh yeah, I'll copy that workout, but I'll like adjust it to my pace and stuff. And I literally chose the marathon just really on a whim. I was like, oh, I want to do a marathon. I'm just going to sign up and do one. So what was your experience? Why did you decide to choose the marathon?
So I quit triathlon, I think maybe September last year, and decided to sort of hit running. It might have been, I lose track of when I actually stopped triathlon. It all sort of blurs into, like it does for probably a lot of us, COVID and end of COVID and lockdowns. You lose track of time. But I stopped triathlon, and I was like, right, I'm going to try and take my running a bit more seriously, just enjoy it. And I entered, I think it was the Goodwood Marathon, as a bit of a challenge for myself. That's actually a lie. I remember now. It's like I said, it all goes back and all gets sort of mixed into different months with COVID. So I entered Manchester Marathon in October of 2000. It would have been October last year. Come to think about it, and I was like, right, I'll do a marathon for the enjoyment. I just turned. I would have been 18, so it's the first year in the UK you can run a marathon. Turning 19 that year, my birthday September. So I did a really good training block. Working. I was self-coached at the time, and was feeling really, really fit. And then, unfortunately, I witnessed a car crash out on a run 2 weeks before Manchester Marathon. And I think the car, it's very blurry what happened, but there was a car, went into another car, flew towards me. Quite extreme. I mean, something out of a movie, really. And yeah, I think the shock of it all, just I might have jumped in a weird way, not to dodge the car per se, but to just out of sort of fear, and just twinged my back a little bit. And it was just one of those injuries that, like a lot of us have experienced, that just are niggly and never go away. And it was affecting my form. And I unfortunately had to, with 4 days before I was meant to be on the start line, I had to call it. And I was gutted. It was I've probably never been, that was a very sad moment to train for. I put in a really good block, and I'd been excited about this is going to be my first marathon. So to not do it was quite upsetting. And that's when I entered Goodwood, because it was in December, so it was 2 months later. So I was like, I'm going to use this fitness and run the Goodwood Marathon. And yeah, it was a great race at Goodwood. My first marathon, 2:40. Can't remember the time. I should remember it, shouldn't I? That's awful. Yeah, two. There we go. Yeah, but very challenging conditions, with some very gusty winds. I actually ran a lot of the race with a pro triathlete now called Andrew Horsfield Turner, who is the PTO's. I think he's ranked number one as the PTO swimmer. PTO ranked number one swimmer for triathlon. He comes from an Olympic triathlon background, but I think he might have gone on to win the race eventually in about 2:36. And I think he's a sub 2:30 guy. So it was hard conditions on the day. We all know it can get a bit nippy in the UK in December. So yeah, it was for some reason after that race, I thought, right, the marathon's for me, even though it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Typical sort of 20 miles, I broke up. I didn't feel it till the 20-mile mark, as most novices don't. And then it hit me like a sack of bricks. And they were the hardest 6 miles of my life. But I love it. And I was like, right, when's the next one? And that's when I entered Manchester. And I was like, right, it's not going to happen this time. I'm going to hire a coach, and marathons are going to be my thing. I thought, I've done 2:40 as my first one, and the training was far from adequate. Let's see what I can do with a proper block. So that's really why I got into marathons. The sort of the answer is I don't really know. Just one of those things you fall into, and yeah, I'm enjoying it now, like reaping the rewards.
Yeah, I guess, like, looking back at your, like, the Manchester experience, your car crash experience, and like not being able to participate in Manchester, that's very similar to my experience. I didn't like witness a car crash or anything, but I trained so hard through COVID, and it was coming up to the rearranged date for the Brighton Marathon that I was doing at the time. I basically got probably 3 weeks out from the race, and I'd done like my last long run. I was like, okay, ready to taper. Got up the next day, went and did a recovery run. This was when I was at work in London, and then got back to my desk at lunch, like finished the day of work, went to get out of my chair, and I was like, oh, my leg's a bit tight, whatever. The next day I go on a run, and I can't physically run without like the excruciating pain, and I had torn my left calf. Literally,
wow, okay.
I didn't even realize at the time. I think it had just got so tight, and I was just like, okay, it's fine, I'll just stretch it out, sort of thing. And then I went to bed that night, woke up the next day, and I was like, doesn't feel right, but I can walk on it. Like, and then as soon as you like hit the pavement to take the first step in the run, like I just couldn't do it. And then pretty much my training looked like this. I did the classic on the Strava, you know when you want to get back so badly to running, but you don't listen to your body. I'm not sure if you've done that, but like I think everyone,
I have in the past,
especially like beginner runners as well, like they get that thing where it's like, okay, I'm fine now, I can run. But yeah, my training was literally like that the whole way to Brighton. I did it this year in April in 3:12 because my training was terrible. I think I got to like 30k and I was in the top 30 and I was on for like 2:45. So I was like, oh, this is fine. And then
the last 12k doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I took the gel and then it just came like straight up, like the whole gel, and I was like, what's going on? I was like, it's fine, I'll carry on running. Went to do another gel, same thing happened, and then it was just like, I think my last 5k, so between 35 and 40, took me half an hour, which is just it's just awful. And then
I've been in that place. It's not nice, is it?
No, it's a hole that you feel like will never, like you'll never get out of. And then you see the finish line and something happens. Like, so I was running like 5-minute Ks and then all of a sudden I'm just like back on pace for the last 500 meters because you just see it. And then
there's a saying I've heard from another podcast, something about like ring the bell syndrome, and it's about like when you hear that bell for like track runners when they're running around a track and then they had the last lap and the bell goes, your brain can switch into that. So it's trying to, I don't know, tap into that part of your brain when you can't see the finish line. I think that's a specialist skill. You can tap into that, you'll go places.
So within the space of a year, you did 2:41, 2:30 earlier this year in the spring, and then you knocked off another about 6 minutes when you did Berlin. How have you gone from 2:41 down to 2:30 and then 2:24? Like, what is your secret?
I'd say, well, secret in terms of just running in general is you've got to love the sport ultimately. If you don't love what you do every day, like, yes, running is a lot less than triathlon in terms of I was training 20 hours a week for triathlon, whereas running, even if you're up at the high miles of 80 to 90 miles a week, it's still 10 hours of your week roughly. So, which is it's a decent proportion of your week. So if you're not someone that loves that, like it's going to be a struggle. And I think that's my biggest strength is win, lose or draw. I love getting out there every day. I think for the most part, the sessions, like you're never going to regret a run or a session after you've done it, unless you've been like injured yourself, or you've gone out when you're under the weather poorly, then of course it would have been better to rest, and rest is very, very important. But I think on those days that it's horrible outside, like it is quite often in England, and you're just not feeling it, you're going off to work or all these life stresses that can get in the way. If you still just take those first few steps, get the first 5 minutes done, you'll quite often finish and just feel a whole lot better for it. And for me, I know this is something we might come to in the podcast in a little bit, but it's my coping mechanism, and I feel it's just where I get that time to process. If I run in the evening, it's processing all of the day's emotions. If I run in the morning, it's setting me up for the day. And I feel I don't know really where I'd be without running, and that's a good thing and a bad thing. Sometimes you've got to have other coping mechanisms, but I think just because I love the sport so much and I'm excited about it every single day, it just makes training a lot easier, and hitting those, when my coach goes, right, we're going to up the miles, I'm like, cool, let's go. Or this is the session, I'm like, right, let's do it. And just being excited for the thing, whether it be a hobby, whether it be now sort of part of my life and part of my career, I think you've got to enjoy it first and foremost, and then the success will come.
Yeah, so obviously that you work for Sweat Elite as an intern. You're
Yep.
also partnered with PureSports and also
Most recently,
Safeguard.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
how does
it's been a busy month.
so how does that life kind of intertwine with your running? Obviously they're all very closely linked, but how do you kind of get the time to be able to run around
Yeah.
everything else you're doing?
Yeah, I think having a job that has flexible hours now with Sweat Elite, in terms of the hours are very flexible, the ability to work from home and get up and train. And Matt is a very accommodating manager, and very, very privileged to be in this position. But we're only talking about the last sort of 6 to 8 weeks this has happened. It's all been a very, very quick thing since my 2:24 performance at Berlin. Before that, I was like most people. I worked a normal, well, not a normal job per se, but because I did shift work as a lifeguard and personal trainer, and I pretty much had to fit training in around all that, 40 hours, quite often a week. So pretty normal working hours, working 5:30 till 1:30, so 5:30 in the morning till 1:30, or 1:30 till 10:30. And yeah, you just gotta find a way to fit in the training. Of course, you're probably not training before 5:30. I've done it on a very rare occasion, but I did not enjoy those mornings getting up at 3 a.m. Most often I would just train after work. And yeah, it was a struggle. And I was working 40 hours a week for for Goodwood, for Manchester. Not for Berlin. I'd settled down my work a little bit. I was privileged to make the decision to drop down my hours to around 20 hours a week, and put a lot of my time into my own coaching business that I'm trying to build up. And hopefully that will continue to grow. So I put all my energy into that and settled down my work at the gym. And yeah, I did find, of course, having that extra time is always going to be beneficial. And I have to be conscious that my performance at Berlin was probably down to a little bit more recovery time, and a little bit of an easier life to fit in all those miles. So
Yeah. So how do you recover? Like what's obviously with PureSports at the moment, I've seen you posting all about like your recovery. So can you just like get into a bit of like your daily recovery that you've been doing?
Yeah, so I think the first and foremost, sleep is the most important, in that you can get any product in the world. It can be Normatec boots, of course, that are very trendy, and I'm very fortunate to have I don't know if you call them a pair, but I do have access to the boots. But if you're not optimizing your sleep routine in terms of going to bed at a good time, turning off your phone, doing all the easy things that a lot of us just maybe take for granted but don't do. In that, I was having this conversation actually with a client this morning on a call, and we were talking about building healthy habits and building a good sleep routine, because we're talking about PureSport, and Grayson, the owner, is very, very passionate in saying that, and very clear in saying that these are supplements. So they are supplementing an already good sleep routine, in that if you're going on your phone and scrolling through TikTok for 2 hours before bed, you've just had a takeaway an hour later, and you haven't let it settle in your stomach, so you've still got sort of the digestion going on, and maybe you're just not doing all the right things. You're restless. You're doing things that are going to affect your sleep. Then having a CBD, having a dose of CBD oil, or taking PureSports Unwind products, they might help a little bit, but really you've got to like hunker down on the fundamentals first, and then all the other products and supplements will just make a massive difference once you've got everything else down. And I have found since, of course, focusing more on my sleep, as I suffer with anxiety and depression, as I'm quite open with, and mostly that comes in at night. In the the CBD and the unwind just helps me sort of relax more into getting to sleep, and then I have a lot better quality sleep throughout the night.
Yeah. I just had the weirdest thing happen to me. So on my watch, I'm not sure if you can see this, but I just got recovery time improved. Whilst I'm going to show it to the camera as well. Whilst we're talking about recovery, and I genuinely think it was literally, like you said, sleep is so important. And today so I'm flying away tomorrow, but today I decided to work from home, and I don't often work from home, but if I work from home, it means I get like more time in bed. And after yesterday's long run, I was just like, you know what, it's probably better to rest, because I'm definitely not probably going to sleep tonight, because I got to get up super early. So but yeah, I think that's so true. Like there's not really a secret about it. It's like supplements are supplements, and they help you with like with the recovery that you're already doing. And I think that's we spoke about when I went on training camps and stuff, and I personally find really hard to like switch off from life, if that makes sense, because
that's my biggest thing.
And especially like where my day job is looking at a computer screen the whole day, it's very hard to then not be like glued to my phone like when I'm in bed. But when I go away, it gives me that time to be like, everything is off, like my phone's off, I'm not checking my notifications from work, I'm not doing that. And then it gives you time to realize, like when I went out to St. Moritz, I probably looked at my phone like twice, and that was because I was messaging someone that I'd met in St. Moritz that we were going out for dinner that night or something like that. And the rest of the time I was just like reading a book, or I find that napping is, I'm not sure if you do this, but it's like the best thing after like a big workout session.
I need to get better at it. It's something that a lot of my peers do, my coach does, but I was talking to someone the other day about napping, and I did have a nap after my time trial on Saturday, and that was very much needed. But like you mentioned, I'm someone that is very, I'm always on the go. Like I'm fidgety. Even here now, like I want to move my chair, and it's been quite a long day. So I'm just someone that likes to fidget. And even at night, I could have had an incredibly exhausting day, but I'll still be lying in bed going, right, what have I got on tomorrow? What am I doing? Like let me just wake up already. I do enjoy sleep, but I find it really like difficult to just unwind and get off sometimes. So I think it's important to mention that I'm definitely in saying these things. I do scroll through TikTok sometimes 2 hours before bed. That we all do it. It happens. You get into a black hole. You get into the YouTube black hole, and I'm someone that I'm trying to preach to other people as I'm on this podcast about what you should do. Like practice what I say, not as I do. But there is quite a few times that I get into that TikTok black hole, or I'm watching a film on my iPad in bed, and just these bad habits that we all do. And you can't be perfect. You can't be a superhuman. Just try and do as many good things as you can. That's what I'm trying to preach.
Yeah, I think that's just like generally the way it goes. Like we're just all humans at the end of the day, and like I don't really think sacrificing like quality sleep over quality life is like two different things. Like I feel like if you were just to completely shut off, like I do find as well, if you go to training camp sort of thing and you're like taking it proper seriously, like you're dialed in and you're focusing on one thing like constantly, that's fine for a short period of time.
Absolutely. It's like 2 weeks, isn't
if you were like that every single day, you just don't have you don't really have a social life. Like you'll just be kind
Yeah.
of shut in this box. You're shutting yourself in this box, and like to be a good athlete, from what I've learned, I'm obviously not a fantastic athlete by any means, but like everyone that I've spoken to, they're always like, yeah, it's good to be super focused at sometimes, but also good to have other interests and like be a normal person, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So
Yeah.
I think that's really like good that you're willing to admit like you do these things as well, because not everyone's perfect.
Yeah, the biggest thing I'll just touch on quickly, because the biggest thing between Manchester and Berlin was Manchester, I tried to get everything right.
Yeah.
And you can't. Like, I think, like you just said, balance is so important and enjoying life is so important. A lot of us, and I think a lot of elite athletes, fall into this trap of, especially if you've got sponsors and this, that, and the other, you feel like you have to be nailing everything, and getting everything right. Whereas life is life, and we're only here for a certain amount of time. Like, you've got to enjoy it. You've got to like socialize. Like, if you want to spend 2 hours on TikTok one night because you just want to, then go ahead. Like, it's enjoyable. It's a good app. I like it. It's a guilty pleasure. Or if you go out for a late night drive, then why not, just to unwind. I think, you've got to, and that's what I did before Berlin. Is I was putting a lot less pressure on myself every day, and still training exceptionally hard. But if I wanted to go out, I went out with friends, and if I wanted to, just have a little more balance. Ultimately, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. So now I really want to talk about mental health. Obviously, like you said earlier, you suffer with depression and anxiety. Personally, I haven't, but I'm showing my solidarity by attempting to grow out this awful mustache that is right over my face right now. You probably can't see it, but
It's a better effort than me. It's a better effort than me.
So obviously, it's quite a hard topic, but can you just like get into like a bit of your experience with it and how you deal with it? Obviously, you spoke about using like CBD, which is helping you like before bed. But yeah, can you just like open up and like the floor is yours? Just
Absolutely.
get into it.
Yeah, so I'm an open book in that I've struggled for a long while, and it's been something that has been in my life for a good, like, a long time. Let me just put it that way. And I'm now getting to a point where I'm comfortable talking about it, and I feel it's not my place to talk about it, but I have got a good level of audience now, and I didn't want to be, if I ever grew my audience and grew my connections with people and my ability to have a voice, I wanted to use that voice to make a positive impact. And that's why on my Instagram I'm pretty open, and especially now on this podcast, being completely open. And I just, if we go way back to my early childhood, I suffered with some childhood trauma that affected me quite badly when I was about 7 years old. And then I got into sort of doing a lot of sport, and that was like it still is now, my coping mechanism. I've always been good at sport, and I found that if I play football, I feel better and the bad thoughts go away. And as a 10-year-old, in year 5, or however old you are in year 5, you don't, there was, even 10 years ago, there was a lot less known about mental health. And you're only 10 years old, you're not understanding, your brain's not fully developed, so you don't understand what's fully going on in there. Do we all? Anyway, even now. But I was just like, oh, I'm having these negative thoughts. Oh, they go away when I play football, or they go away when I go for a run, and things at home were difficult. And I just thought, right, I'll go for a run. And eventually it got quite obsessive. I just did so much at a young age. And like I said, I threw myself in year 7 into everything because it was where I had escape from my head. So I was playing rugby, I was playing football, I was running cross country, doing this, that, and the other. I was just the most active 10, 11-year-old you could imagine. And I was incredibly diligent with everything. And you think I'm only in year 7, like I'm 11 years old, I shouldn't be trying to be a pro athlete at this age, but I was monitoring everything, my food, my sleep, like researching how to be the best, just because it was a way in which I could channel that negative energy, I thought, into something positive. But eventually that the obsessive nature took over, and I went down a very dark path, and I was diagnosed with anorexia when I can't remember the age, but when I think I was 12 years old. And then I had a very tricky, it would have been 3 to 4 years. And it's something that I'm open about. It, of course, when I see anyone, it's by its nature, it's a secretive illness. A lot of people still don't understand about it. And especially in men, it's still not spoken about enough, because people just think, oh, it's restriction of food, it's this, that, and the other. It's completely different. It's something that, in my opinion, can be very chemical in terms of your brain, it can just happen, or you can be predisposed to it from your parents. It can be slightly genetic, and that's my belief anyway, from my own personal research. And I think I just fell into it due to my slight obsessive nature anyway. And once you're in. It's one of those things. It's a very unfortunate, of course. I know someone at PureSport who's experienced a very similar journey to me with Becky Briggs. Our stories are quite similar, but of course they're similar on in terms of on the surface, but I'm sure they're incredibly different the devil's in the detail. And that's for Becky to open up more about, and for me to talk about in podcasts like these. But I had 2 admissions into inpatient units, so I spent pretty much most of my childhood in hospital trying to get over this illness. And it's a tricky one. Like I said, you sort of, you're stuck, and you don't want to get better. you just want to stay unwell, and especially if you're for me, the food was never the biggest part. It was the only thing that made me happy, gave me sense of purpose, was exercise. And it's very hard to, of course, get to a healthy weight or get healthy again when you're just obsessively, right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, even an inpatient. So it was a struggle, and of course it was a very scary time for my family, and I wouldn't be here without them, I don't think. They were there every step of the way. And the quite morbid but important fact is 1 in 3 people with anorexia actually die from the disease. Or disease, I don't know if we want to call it disease, condition. My vocabulary probably wasn't perfect there, but you've got to really be thankful, and I'm extremely thankful now that it's been 6 years since I've really had. A lot of people say, is it a lifelong condition? Will you still have negative thoughts? Will you still have damaging thoughts that affect you in your day-to-day life? And I'd say now it does. I'd say 100% no. I'd say I definitely have times that are difficult, and maybe some similar behaviors come into life, and they're probably not the healthiest, but I think they'll always be with me now. And ultimately, I'm in a much better place, and it's made me the man who I am today. So I have no regrets. Of course, it was a horrible time, and I missed out on school. I think I went into high school for a total of maybe 8 months after year 7. So that has been a difficult 5 years with post school. But would I be working for Sweatily, and would I have ran a 2:24 if it wasn't for getting over that illness? Because by its nature, you have to be incredibly dedicated to have. If you look at most people that have anorexia, they're incredibly. If you forget about all the negative traits of anorexia, and you look at people that suffer with the illness, most of them are very intellectual, very highly achieving, very determined, very perfect people who unfortunately just get taken over by this horrible thing inside their head, and it's tough. But and if anyone's listening that is struggling, like, yeah, it's a horrible thing to go through, and I'm sorry you are, and just hang in there. If it's hard to say what, because it's such a complex illness and still no one knows about it really, and it's different for everyone. But if I had to say, my one tip is just try and persevere, and probably talk to someone that's not your family. Your family are great, but I'd say therapy during that time was extremely important to me, and I continue to see a therapist even now once a month. And it's just good to talk to someone that doesn't really have any, I don't know what the right word is here, but have any, you know what kind of word I'm looking for.
Like personal
Yeah,
connection with you, where
they
they're completely they are there to listen, and
they're a
not judge.
listener, and
Yeah,
that no judgments. You always worry if your parents have a judgment or friends have a judgment. I'm very good to have a very good social network, and my family are incredibly close. But sometimes you just want that person to talk to. And I think if you've got £50 to see a therapist every month, you should go do it. There's brilliant sites out there like BetterHelp, where you have access to thousands around the world, and you can just do it over Zoom, like we are here. And it's something that I think everyone, whether you feel like you suffer or not with mental health, I think it's something that can, if we want to talk about sport, it's something that maybe has helped me. In Berlin, my coach said I wouldn't be able to run sub 2:25. She said it was impossible, based on my training, and then I go and run 2:24. And I think the brain is an extremely powerful tool, and if we can tap into that, then you can really go far with whatever you're doing, whether it be running, whether it be sport, whether it be art, film, whatever. So
yeah. I think that's quite incredible that your coach told you that it was impossible. And yeah, it's just, I think it's a bit like Kipchoge, like he always talks about the power of the mind. And also a lot of ultra marathoners as well that I've like read books about them. They're always like, it's crazy what your mind can do when you're in full control. And like obviously running 2:24 is just like such a huge achievement. Do you have a next marathon goal?
Do I have? Oh, I don't know if I want to say this.
You can say yes, and you can give us a ballpark. You don't have to.
So London is the next one. I think I've been pretty open with London being my next marathon. I was umming and ahhing between going out and doing Seville with Matt Fox and Nick Bester, and joining the sub 2:20 train for as long as my body can hold on for, and joining them in the block and being part of that. But in the end, I want to do my local, so to speak. It's not that local for me, but it's my home, the UK, and to see, sort of do it in my home nation, and to see everyone or the crowd cheering me on, hopefully, to a PB. A PB is the aim, but to go under 2:20 is the dream next year. That is our goal, some point next year, to get under 2:20.
I mean, that would be fantastic. Like, out of curiosity, what is the do you know what the qualifying time is for a GB male slash
I I don't know. I know that my coach and I are looking at, of course, I think if you're running sub 2 around the 2:15 and lower mark,
yeah,
you're on the surfaces of sort of things happening and like eyes pricking up. So that's the dream. And like we've mentioned, I'm 21. Hopefully, touch wood, I have a long career ahead of me,
yeah,
and this is just the start. So yeah, hopefully those things, and it's good to stay patient. If I don't, I know that sub 220 is it's a bit of a dream for next year. But if you don't set your heights there, like yeah, you gotta reach for the stars, haven't you? Sometimes.
yeah. I mean, so when I finished my first marathon, I kind of like ended up talking to my current coach now, and I met him in person, and we were just chatting, and he was like, "You know what, mate? You just turned 22.
Yeah.
Why are you doing the marathon?" And I was like, "I don't really know." And like, so my reassessment is I'm not focusing on the marathon. I'm going for like I know my strength is with the further distances and stuff. So we're kind of looking at
Yeah.
the target, the 10K, and so at the moment, like my block is just pure like strength workouts that I've never done as well. Like I did 2400s the other day. I've never done that in my life before. So yeah, I think it's very, very interesting to like see where you can go, especially like yourself. Like, I mean, only being 21 and aiming for a sub 220 is probably the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But do you have any rivals out there who are a similar age at all?
My coach has been looking into it because, of course, for her, if she can say, right, my client Cooper is the quickest so and so, but it's very hard to.
Yeah,
There's definitely some quick guys out there, and of course the pool of people that are running marathons my age are very slim. There's only a few, but I know there's some brilliant athletes, and yeah, their 5K times are a lot better than mine. I know a lot of people my age that are running very, very like sub sort of 14:30s. So
yeah,
I need to work on my speed like you are now, and like I have been doing since Berlin. And it's different. It's a shock to the system for sure. And I'm enjoying the humbling process of it all because you do, like with everything, you fall into sometimes the comfort zone and the comfort blanket. I can't believe I'm calling marathon training a comfort blanket, but sometimes it's what you do day in day out, and you get used to it. So to suddenly be working at different zones and doing sessions where you're pushing yourself to those really high sort of heart rate zones is something I haven't really done since my triathlon days.
yeah,
And yeah, it's tough, and it's very different to the last sort of year or two of training. And I'm just hoping that we start to see some of the benefits of it all in 2 weeks' time at Battersea.
yeah. I'm sure you'll be able to. What's the goal? Sub 32? Was it sub 32 we spoke about earlier?
Yeah, so the goal is my PB currently stands at 32:30, which
Yeah,
I haven't really raced very many good races. I've been quite fortunate in that all my best performances have been Manchester and Berlin. I ran a 1:10:44 at Cambridge half in it would have been March this year, and I will be returning to that race, hopefully for a sub 70 attempt, or most definitely for a sub 70 attempt. And yeah, other than that, it's been tricky over the shorter distances. So just to have a good race, I'm going to be going hard because I'll be trying to stay with Nick and Matt for their sub 30 attempt. So it'll pretty much be Yeah, hard from the off, but that's the fun of racing. And Battersea Parks is a magical place, and hopefully on the 10th of December some magical things can happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the London running mecca, really. I mean,
It is.
I've raced at Battersea once before, but it was a rust buster, like literally the first race back after the marathon. I just like, I had no speed work as well was done, so it was just like went all out, and it was on the hottest day of the year so it was like, well, one of the hottest days. So it was like 30, or no, it's probably like 28 degrees, nearing the 30 mark, super humid. I just like, yeah, it was a terrible experience. It was a 17:30, and it was just like, I reckon I could, if it was, I mean, I don't want to make excuses, but if it was cooler and I had obviously done some speed work, I reckon I could have, I was in shape to do all right, like below that. But I mean, that's another goal of mine, is like, I'm racing the 10K in a few weeks, so that's kind of my first race since this like block has started. So it's just kind of like a 10K gauge, and then hopefully next year I'll get into running some fast times as well.
Yeah,
I
the
think
10K will be a limiting factor for your marathon ultimately, because you can't, if you're not running sub 32, you're not gonna. I mean, my marathon performance was pretty freaky in terms of the times I was running before that. I was just able to pull something out of the bag, and like I said, the mind can be extremely powerful, and I just hung on for dear life, and it was just the day of my life. To be honest, it's why I've got it up above me now, and I look at it every single day. Because it's the best day of my life by far, and it's one that probably will be with me forever. Even though it wasn't my first marathon, it's probably the first. Manchester and Goodwood, there were things that were just so wrong with the training and everything.
Yeah.
For Berlin, there was, like every marathon block, things that didn't go to plan, but it was the first time I truly dedicated myself to that distance.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm very, very grateful that, of course, everything, to everything that has happened since has happened. I believed if I did the time, uh, things would happen in my life. But to actually sort of sometimes I have to pinch myself and go, oh my gosh, PureSport, like Matt Fox, like the people I've looked up to. So yeah, you gotta chase your dreams, and I'm very, very lucky.
I mean, I think beating Matt Fox on his sub 220 attempt was probably quite a good application for working at Sweat Elite.
It was. I think it was more in the I saw him with about a kilometre to go, and I couldn't believe it. I just saw the best athletics vest. I saw that bloody blue hair of his that him and Nick did. I didn't know he was part of that as well. I was like, Matt, come on. I know Nick's doing it, but the blue hair. And I was like, gosh, that is Matt Fox. Never met him. We'd spoken, but never met him before. And he was, I mean, almost a celebrity to me. And I was like, right, come on, Cooper, you can just get yourself, try and get yourself up to the mat. And I could see he was struggling. Caught him up with about 400 meters to go, and then I just put in this kick just to, I don't know, just to wring everything out. The crowd was amazing. We just gone under the Brandenburg, and he tried to stay with me, he said, and just couldn't. And then I think he finished about 15 seconds after I had finished, and we spent the whole day together that day, and we just clicked. Both from Australia, similar sense of humour, and just got along well with his friendship group. And then 4 weeks later, offered me the position I'm in now. So yeah, it's been a crazy time since Berlin, but I wouldn't change any bit of it.
Yeah, I think that kind of really wraps up the episode. I mean, it's kind of gone full circle. We started talking about the marathon and ended talking about the marathon. So I think that, obviously, like I said, I think this wraps up the episode quite well. So we're going to move on to the final two questions that I ask every guest.
Brilliant.
So if you were stranded on a desert island with someone throughout history, fictional or non-fictional, who would it be and why? Now, there's one caveat that I've had to start adding. You cannot be with Bear
Oh
Grylls.
gosh,
Bear Grylls is
cannot be with Bear Grylls. All right.
because basically all you're going to do is you're just going to live your life out on this island, right? You will eventually die. So you can choose
Like cruelty. Yeah.
yeah. But you can't choose Bear Grylls because he is obviously the biggest survival expert out there.
Okay.
So just think about enjoying your time, and who would you want to spend it with?
All right. I think, gosh, one of them would most definitely be Peter Attire. I don't know if you know him at all.
I have no clue who he is. Can you explain to
So
the audience who he is?
Some of them might know him. He's got a podcast called The Drive. He's featured quite a lot on Joe Rogan's podcast as well, and he's a specialist in longevity. And he's just got an amazing life story, and he's just so intelligent. And I think if I was on a desert island, we could live well. He's an ex. He swam competitively, so he could swim and get stuff for us if we had to. He knows all the survival skills, and also I could just listen to what he's saying for hours and ultimately learn. But that's more. I don't know. That's not the best one. It's a difficult question. If I'd say someone else, David Attenborough. There we go. David Attenborough, definitely. Yeah, we'll switch. Yeah. Not Peter Attire, because eventually I reckon I'd get bored of like science studies after maybe the 5th day, because ultimately if we're stuck here forever, you can't hear about statistics and blood glucose monitors. You just want to have a good time. So I reckon it'd be David Attenborough, and we could just chill, and he would tell me about all the wildlife, and just I'd learn so much. He would go, "Oh, this is a so and so animal," and I'd be just in awe. And he's got a great voice, so you could listen to him. He could talk about bread for hours, and you'd find it interesting. Yeah. Or it'd be someone comedy. I think someone that could make me laugh would be good. Michael McIntyre, Russell Howard.
God, how many people are you having on this island?
It's a party. It's a party. A social guy.
Yeah.
David Attenborough, we'll go with that then. David Attenborough, okay. That can be my one.
Well, I would like to reveal that we have had someone choose David Attenborough before, but that's fine.
Oh, really?
You can have him. You can have him. It's all right.
I'll have Russell Howard.
Okay, Russell Howard.
I met him before.
He's locked it in. Okay, so secondly is, what is the funniest story you've had that's happened during a run? Last week on the podcast, we had a guy who nearly drowned in a lake, and that's not really a funny story, but
during a run.
Friends, yeah, so him and his friends went running on an iced lake, and he just fell straight in, and his friends had to pull him out, and he said it was probably the most interesting run of his life. So it can be interesting, it can be funny, it can be just anything really.
Oh gosh, I mean, the first thing that comes to my head, which I suppose it would most runners, is there's going to be a time when you need a toilet in a bad and you're not in the best place. That's happened to the best of us, so that's definitely one. But one that happens a lot, so that's not a single occurrence. One that stands out is definitely my first half marathon. I paced it terribly, raced way too hard, and it was a really windy day, and with 3 miles to go, I had my Nike Aero Swift, and this was the first Nike Aero Swift vest they came out with. I love that vest. I treasured it. But as we know, these racing vests, they're so thin. And it was my first race. I wasn't very good at pinning my number on. And it was before the days of having a timing chip on your shoe, probably. So the number contained a timing chip. So at 10 miles, my number came off, flew off in the wind, and I had to stop, try and chase it, stamp it down with my foot, and then I had to hold it for the last 3 miles. And for some reason, I have no idea why. Probably because I was just incredibly depleted and tired. I could have just held it, but I thought it had to be like presentable. So I was holding it to my chest, trying to show that it had my number. And you can just see all the race photos of me trying to hold this number perfectly symmetrical, as if it's still pinned on. And I remember my arm the next day was incredibly sore. But yeah, that's probably my funniest story. You can be sure that now every single race, I'm double checking every single pin to check that they're nicely done.
I mean, to run a 79:21 whilst holding that for the last 3 miles, that's pretty mad.
I did go through. I think I went through 10 miles in 57:30. So
you had a big buffer.
Yeah, the last 10 5K was pretty tough. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Amazing.
To you.
It's been a pleasure.
And hopefully we'll be able to catch up later on in the year when or next year when you've kind of smashed that 220 barrier.
After London will be great. If I can just mention, of course, I've mentioned my coach quite a lot in this podcast. Yeah. So my coach is Helen Davies, who is an ex-Commonwealth Games marathon runner, and she's now an excellent coach. Of course, you can see that what she does works. But if you don't want to get coached by her, you can always get coached by me. I'm trying to build up my coaching and working with quite a few athletes at the moment, but my inbox is open and happy to help whatever ability you may be. Any ability is welcome. You don't have to be a sub 225 guy. You can be anyone. If you just want to get better at running, I'm there. And I can well and truly say that having someone in your corner, it will just make the world of a difference, whether you're going for a sub 225 or whether you're just trying to finish a 5K. It's a good investment.
And how can people get into contact with you? So
the best way is just through Instagram. I've got a link to my email there on my link tree, or you can just shoot me a DM. DMs are always open, but all my details can be found on Instagram.
Okay, sweet.